So unfortunately, I didn't think about bringing free books to raffle off. Next time I'm going to have to think of that. But if anybody wants to come hit me up, I'll tell you more about my book and I'll send you a copy, even from the United States. So we're going to talk about relationships today. And there are a few things, at least in my career, that I've found that can make an impact more than how good a product person is at building and maintaining relationships. Product management is inherently cross-functional, right? We constantly work with lots of different people. And so we have to have these strong, healthy relationships, at least until AI replaces all of us, and then we don't care anymore. But I'm kidding, actually. I actually think this is certainly one of the things that, regardless of what our craft looks like in 10 years and 5 years, and I do believe AI is going to make some really great progress and going to help us do things better. Still going to be humans at the center, and we're still going to need to build relationships. So let's start with the truth. Interpersonal relationships are complex. It's because we're all human, right? We're all different. And human beings are not simple beings. We're complex. We have different ways of thinking. We interpret data differently. We contextualize situations differently. The way that we interact with the world around us and the data that we have and the information and the situations is different. Every single one of us out here thinks slightly differently than the person sitting next to you. We also feel things differently. Some folks are very emotional. They wear their hearts on their sleeves. Some people are very closed. We never know what they're thinking, right? We interact and feel the world differently. Of course, we communicate differently, right? There's the kind of people who overthink every word that comes out of their mouth. Oh my gosh, how is that going to be interpreted? How is that going to be taken by the audience? Then there's the people who are blunt and direct, and that's the way to go, and just get it out there and move on. And those two people usually end up marrying each other, by the way. At least they did in my case. I'll let you guess which one I am. So we also just simply come from different life experiences. Like, we all bring our own perspectives, whatever that is. And we bring that to the table when we work. And the truth is, that's our power. That's a wonderful thing about product management. We get to bring all of those perspectives. We get to bring that diversity to the table. It helps us be stronger teams. It helps us be stronger people. And ultimately, it helps us build better products. That's a wonderful thing. But it's also what makes it complex to build these relationships. Okay? So here's another truth. You can't process your way to good, strong relationships. I wish you could. I wish there was some framework that I could hand you and you could do A, B, C, and boom, all of your relationships would be perfect. If I had that, I'd be a billionaire. So I really do wish that existed, but it doesn't, right? Because of all of the things that we've talked about, you can't process, you can't framework your way to good relationships. There's too many nuances and too much human aspect. But you can, and you should, do something somewhat structured to know where you stand. You should know where your relationships currently stand. What is the status of those relationships with the people that you need to do work with the people in your product ecosystem? I call it your product ecosystem, simply a term to encapsulate everyone that works with your product, day to day, month to month, any kind of impact that they may make on your product. You need to have a relationship with these people. Now, who is in your product ecosystem? If I ask you that question, you're probably going to instantly start thinking about your core product team. You're probably going to start thinking about those that design, maybe the engineers, the developers, the folks that help grow, market, maybe depending on your company, the sales team, if you have one of those. Those are the people we usually work with day to day, your kind of core product team. But don't forget about the people who support the product. the people who support you in your operations, in your data analysis, etc. The people who fund budgets, approve your budgets, fund your problem solving and your solutions and your teams. And then ultimately all of those people above and around you that can make decisions that impact your product. Now, you may not work with all of these people every single day, but you need strong relationships with all of them. So the first step is to just document and think about, who are these people that I need to have relationships with? And then you can go and say, where am I standing with them? And this is how you do a somewhat structured view of your current status with all of those people that you need to have healthy working relationships with. I've been in product management a long time, and one of the things that I see over and over, and I wrote about in the book, is there's one common theme, there's one common element that lays the foundation for most strong relationships in product management, and that's confidence. We need to have confidence in each other as a team, and more specifically for us as product folks looking to have good relationships with all of those people in our ecosystem. We need to make sure that those people, each individual person and collectively as a team, they have confidence in you as a product manager, which means they believe that you can lead the product. They believe that you can influence others. They believe you know the market, that you're a proxy for the customer, that you understand how to connect dots and knock down roadblocks. They believe in your capability as a product person. But there's another prong to this confidence that's really important as well. And that is, they have to have confidence in what you're building together. They have to believe in the product. They have to believe in the vision and the go forward strategy. As you can imagine, if you have someone on your team that doesn't have a high level of confidence in you or in the product, you may be on shaky ground. Because as much as, interpersonal relationships revolve around liking people and all of these kinds of human things, when it comes to work and when it comes to the context of product management, it usually boils down to this foundation. Doesn't mean it's the only thing that matters, but this is how you know where you stand. If you can look at these two elements and understand current status of how everyone has confidence, what level of confidence they have in you, and they have in what you're building together. Now, here's the really structured part, right? We wouldn't have a product management presentation without a 4x4. So what you can do, there's some subjectivity here, okay? It's more art than science, maybe, but it's absolutely as structured as you're probably going to get when it comes to relationships. So let's assume you buy into the theory that confidence in you and confidence in the product are kind of the two-pronged elements that you need to ensure are strong and high for you to ultimately have good relationships. So you can literally go through that list of people in your product ecosystem and think about their relationship, your relationship with them. How does that stand today? Do you have someone who is high in confidence in you? They really believe in you. They've worked with you for a long time. They've seen you shine. They talk about you positively in the room when you're not there. They really buy in to your ability to lead this product. They also really love the product. They think it's going on the right direction. They buy into the vision. These folks are your champions. And we love these folks. These are our BFFs. We want everyone to be our champion, right? Doesn't quite work out that way all the time, but this is your goal. You would love to have this kind of relationship with everyone in terms of having that confidence level in both areas, lay the foundation of your relationship. Sometimes you've got folks who believe in you. They've worked with you. They've seen you shine. They know you can do the job. But for some reason, they're not so sold on the product. Maybe it's they haven't been associated with it long enough to really buy into it. Perhaps it's that they think the solution could have could use some optimization. Maybe they don't think the problems we're solving. It could be myriad things. But you know through your interactions with them that they're not the biggest believer in the product direction. So these folks have a positive relationship with you. I call them your allies. right? They believe in you. You just may need to do a little work to build their confidence in what you're building together. Okay. And then conversely, sometimes you've got some people who really believe in the product. Like they've been working on the product, they believe in it, they are absolute champions across the organization with where you're taking this product, but they're not so sold on you. One of the things about this exercise that you have to be kind of very unemotional about it and honest with yourself and reflective and say, I've had enough interactions with them that they don't quite seem to be, too confident in me. They don't quite seem to trust me yet, right? They may be a passive advocate. Again, it's not necessarily totally negative. It just means that you need to approach them slightly differently than those other folks, right? You need to leverage the common love of your product to build a bit of a more personal relationship. And then finally, we've got these folks who don't seem to buy into anything. There are detractors, and we hate to have these, right? We don't want to have this because this sucks the energy out of the room. This is really, really difficult to have. Makes us unhappy, makes it hard to do things, right? And again, it doesn't mean that this person is bad or that you need to prove them wrong. This exercise is only about setting a realistic current status for where you think your relationships stand today with an individual. Okay. So if you know from based on your feedback, based on your interactions, based on things you've heard or seen, that you have someone who you need to really work on in terms of these confidence levels, they're a detractor. It's not good or bad. It's just you've got to put them in the right box, right? Because once you put them in the right box and you understand and you kind of do this intentional exercise, now you know where you stand. Now you can take this structured exercise, this foundation you've laid, and use it for the human part. You can overlay this. This is the real work, right? But this is going to be more effective if you start from a place of knowing where you stand. Okay. So each of those people, each of those quadrants, right? Your champion, your ally, your passive advocate, even your detractor, you're going to have nuanced approaches, right? Imagine if you have a champion, and we'll go through some kind of practical things, what you need to do for each of these. But imagine you have a champion, someone that, again, believes in you, loves the product, and you approach them in a kind of jovial, informal way, right? I mean, you have a good relationship with them. Maybe you joke around, maybe you have a good relationship. Imagine that type of interaction and approach with a detractor who is never happy with what's going on. It's gonna really not go well. So you've got to have personalized approaches. This is why we do that structured part. Now, the truth of the matter is this human part of relationships is really built on collaboration, open communication, empathy. In the context of product management, these three things are really critical to building that confidence that then builds those healthy relationships. The truth be told, these terms, collaboration, open communication, empathy, they're buzzwords. You hear them all the time. And I mean, they are very important in what we do, but they're big, broad ideas, right? And so sometimes they're too broad, they're too fluffy. We don't know what it means. And so I want to be very specific about these three areas and how, in the context of relationships, they can help you build confidence and then ultimately strengthen your relationships. So from a collaboration standpoint, it doesn't just mean, yeah, we work together, we collaborate. It means very specifically that you embrace all of those things that we talked about before that are our differences, that everybody feels comfortable in bringing their ideas and their perspectives and their world to the table. That's real healthy collaboration. And you do that so that you're not always stuck in the same rut, right? You're always somewhat challenging in a healthy way the status quo. You couple that with open communication. And to me, in this context, what that means is that you trust each other enough to have debates, to hold each other accountable, to question each other's assumptions. That's healthy. Relationship conflict is a different thing. Task conflict and being able to understand perspectives and bring them together, that's where real confidence is built. And then finally, empathy. I mean, we talk a lot about empathy in product management, usually from the perspective of our users, that we need empathy for our users and our customers. But don't forget, we need to have empathy for our coworkers, our partners, right? What this means to me in this context is basically approach them from a point of kindness. We never know what's happening. Again, we're all humans with our own life experiences. We very well may not know what's happening in their life. We probably shouldn't. It's not our place. But just approach them from a point of kindness, approach them from a point of positivity, and most importantly, from a point of good intentions, right? Assume that everyone is having good intentions, even if they're a detractor who questions the product a lot, who questions your ability a lot. If you can start with a empathetic, good intentions starting point, that's going to make things easier. You're going to be able to understand, put yourself in their shoes a little bit more, and that's going to help you ultimately build that confidence. Okay, let's put them all together now. We've got this structured thing that you've already done. You've said, okay, here are my folks on my four blocker. I know who my champions are, my allies, etc. Now I'm going to, layer in this human part of it so that I can approach each relationship appropriately. All right. So we've got your champions. Again, those are the ones who love you and they love the product, right? We love them. They're our BFFs. What do you need to do with them from a relationship standpoint? You don't need to build a relationship. You have a good relationship. You just need to nurture it. What does nurturing a good relationship look like in our world? It's checking in, right? It's making sure that you don't neglect the relationship and take for granted that they are your champion. How can I help you? What's going on in your world? Hey, I've got some new research. I'd love to run it by you. Let's brainstorm. And this is interestingly sometimes more important for champions that you work with in your core team. You work day to day. Sometimes you think, well, I see them every day. We work together all the time, so I'm not neglecting the relationship. But sometimes you need to, as the two of you take it up a level, like take it out of the day-to-day minutia and get a little big picture and make sure you check in on them from a big picture perspective as well. Am I still helping you? Am I still giving you what you need? And kind of go back and forth that way. Don't neglect your champions. They're so important, not only because they help you, but they can also help you bring some of these other folks over to the champion world, right? They can help you. They tout you around the organization. That's a good thing. Okay. What about folks that are your ally? Again, really believe in you, worked with you. They think you're a star. They're not sold on what you're building together for whatever reason. What does that look like? You need to cultivate that. A little bit different than nurture, still a positive relationship, but you need to cultivate their belief and understanding of what's happening with the product. That can look something like this. Like, what would make you have more confidence in the product? What do you believe is the shortcoming in the product, right? If you were to look at this problem, how would you solve it? Right? Or ask them to help you think through a feature, functionality, prioritize something, maybe rethink things, right? So it shows your ability to collaborate and have open communication and empathize with their point of view. And sometimes they actually have very valid points, and you can actually take that and make the product better, which in turn makes them more confident in the product. And it also improves the personal relationship, because they see that you're able to take more information and pivot as needed. Now, these folks that have a strong bias towards believing in the product, but not so sold on you for whatever reason, again, call them passive advocates. You need to build some of the relationship there. You need to build some of that personal trust and confidence there. And so usually that looks something like, relying on or leveraging your common belief in the product. Like, tell me why you love our product. I'd love to tell you why I love it. Why do you love this problem we're solving, right? Leverage that, lay the foundation there, and then just be direct. Like, what can I do better? I'd love to have a better relationship with you. How can I help you? If we had a magic wand and you waved it and our working relationship was perfect, what would it look like? And just work on it from there, right? So because you know they're a passive advocate, you can tailor that approach. And then ultimately, these are the hardest ones, right? You've got to repair things here. And that's never fun, but it is something very important to try to at least move these folks one way or the other. You may never make detractors champions in some cases, and that's okay. Maybe your goal is just to move them up in confidence in you or the product, right? A somewhat more healthy relationship. And ultimately, these are the hardest conversations to have, and they take multiple rounds of conversations, but they're critical. You've got to hit it head on. Now, again, come into these conversations as unemotional as possible, as don't be defensive, right? Hard to do. Again, we're humans. We're trying to prove someone wrong. I am great. This product is the best, right? Don't do that. Just go in, try to lay some common ground, right? Again, back to that, we're all coming at it with good intentions. We all want the product to succeed. What does that look like? Maybe you have a different perspective and you think it should, look and act different. What does that look like? What's our common ground? And then lay out all the things very directly, like, why do you have no confidence in me? Right? And bring evidence and let's talk about that. Again, don't necessarily try to prove them wrong. You're just fact finding here and setting the foundation for some better relationships in the future. But, if they say something like you never meet your timelines, you're never on time. What does that look like? Tell me some examples. Never meet timelines is very subjective and emotional. So let's get to what it really is. All right. Now, most of the time I recommend these conversations happen one-on-one with you and that person. Sometimes it's gone too far and sometimes you might need a mediator or, the managers or someone else. I think you would know if that's the case. But most of the time we're adults and we understand that we're not the best in relationship status, but both of us probably want it to be better. So leverage that to move this forward. Okay. So that's kind of layering on the structure with how you approach all of these human relationships. So just to summarize, there's no one right way. Again, I would love to tell you if you do this and every one of you do the exact same thing, all your relationships will be perfect. That's not how it works. But you can do a bit of a structured approach, do an intentional exercise to understand where all of your relationships stand today. Layer on the human aspects of collaboration, open communication, empathy. Those things build that confidence layer. And ultimately, you can have stronger, more healthy relationships across your product team. Thank you so much. Love to connect with you. Feel free.
JJ, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
That was very insightful.
Any time for questions?
We do have time for questions. We also started a couple minutes late, so I'm going to keep you a couple minutes late. I see a hand right in the middle there, and please, if other people have a question. I have one question whilst that one is being reached.
Okay.
Okay, so sometimes we work with people where we know that we are one of those people on that quadrant. Mm-hmm. What do you do differently when you inadvertently realize you are a detractor of somebody else? How do you fix that?
That's a really good question. I'm a big believer that self-reflection is one great quality in a product manager, probably in anybody. But in our world, I think we have to be honest with ourselves. And when we realize that maybe we're one of the roadblocks to healthy relationships, then I would go through the same thing. I would kind of use this on my own and be proactive if you thought that was the right kind of culture and you had the right relationship to say, I think I'm being a detractor. I think I'm not helping you do your job better. Can we work on this? Just be direct. And sometimes they'll be like, whatever, we're fine. Sometimes they'll be like, oh my God, yes, you do suck. Let's work on this. So it depends on the relationship, but I love the fact that if we can reflect back on ourselves and see how we're doing, I think that's a really good thing to do.
Hi, I'm Martha. Great talk, by the way. I just would like to take a step back and ask you how I can correctly assess where I stand with all those people, because in some cultures, and I mean company culture, but also like different countries' cultures and so on, like there is no direct feedback, right? Either not direct positive feedback or not negative feedback. You just sometimes need to read between the lines, but you might not be sure where you stand really. How would you approach it to actually know and then be able to act on it?
Yeah, great question. The first thing I usually suggest is to go through the exercise yourself based on whatever data you do have. And it can be anecdotal, it can be feelings, it can be subjective. If you just feel that they have some sort of animosity towards the product or you, right, you can plot them, and you can do a loose kind of exercise yourself just based on what you have. But to your point, that doesn't give you all you need. And so one of the things that I've done a lot is work with teams, and we go in as teams and we have these conversations, and we actually ask each other to plot themselves on my quadrant, right? You got to have a little bit of a thick skin there, because sometimes you may think you've got a good relationship and they put you down here or whatever, they put themselves, So that's a good way to do it if the culture allows it, right? If the company culture kind of has that openness. There's also a survey that I've developed that's, look, it's not a perfect science, but it asks them questions about you. It's somewhat similar to 360 or something like that. And then you can get a little bit of at least directional where people would kind of sit on that quadrant. And again, that can help you from there. But the truth be told, at the end of it, like before you're going to go, try to cultivate, nurture, build, etc., you need to validate. You don't want to start, nurturing someone who needs some building, right? And so you do need to just one-on-one. This is not the easiest part, but it's also one of the most important parts. Just one-on-one, kind of say, look, one of my goals next year is to improve relationships across all of my stakeholders and partners. And this is one way that I'm doing it. I'd love for you to have direct, participation in it.
Fantastic. Any questions on this side? Generally, we end up. I'll come over to you. Generally, we end up having all the questions coming from stage left. Pass the microphone.
Hi, Pradeep from Swisscom. Thanks for the talk. I'm wondering, after we do this kind of analysis, you have all these 4 people in these 4 quadrants. How would you prioritize which ones to go after first?
I love that question. A couple of ways. One, first of all, I would not let those detractors linger too much, right? Because if you leave them there too long and you just keep working as if nothing's wrong, that's usually not a good thing and ends up kind of making it worse. So probably want to prioritize that. But there's another layer that you can kind of put on this. And I mentioned it very briefly in the kind of who's in your product ecosystem. If this is someone who the product has a direct dependency on, right? You work with day to day, there's, designer, engineer, those type of folks, growth marketer, someone that really impacts the day to day and has a big impact on the product. I'd probably prioritize those folks over, your CFO who's going to sign off on the budget every year, right? So you need to layer on some prioritization of the people who have impact on your product and how often and how big of a kind of relationship you have with them. So that's where I would start. I wouldn't let the detractors fester, no matter who they are. And then I would kind of layer on and prioritize those. From there, if all things being equal, I'd probably do, passive advocate, then, who are the people who believe in the product, but not you, then do the allies and cultivate those to make them believe in the product. And then you can't neglect those champions, but they're probably the least important if you're, really trying to prioritize.
One last question on the left-hand side. Let's see, an eager hand going up there. So.
Hey, I was just thinking about it as you were answering the last question. Can you make your champions work for you to the other ones?
Absolutely. And it's a really, really good way. And you want to do it in a thoughtful way, right? I mean, but yes, you should be. And those champions should be, talking about the product, and they should be talking about you when you're not in the room and touting the product. And so they should be influencers around the organization. And it's perfectly fine. Again, there's, some dependencies on how strong your relationship is with those champions, but there's nothing wrong with talking to them about this. Same thing, being direct and saying, I'm looking to improve my relationships. I would love your thoughts on this person. You seem to have a good relationship with this person. How do you think I can best approach him or her? Would you be open to, giving a talk on the why behind our product? Absolutely. I think the more you can leverage those champions to move people around, I think is a great thing.